Where should I start from? Now, let's talk about it. I'm simply not going to give a lecture on this topic. I'm not going to explain theoretically the way we studied it in school, college, or university. Not at all. Everything I am going to talk about will directly reflect real human life and society. I know democracy doesn't merely mean of the people, by the people, and for the people. Whenever the word democracy comes up, the majority of people around the world immediately remember those three phrases. In my opinion, the concept of democracy in human society was not only about politics and governance, but also about equality, discipline, and maintaining balance within the social ecosystem in terms of power and dominance. The things I just mentioned already include politics and power. Some people might say there is democracy in our country, and the biggest proof of that is that we vote for candidates, and the candidate who receives the majority of votes wins the election and becomes the official representative of the people. Yes, you can certainly say that this is one example of democracy. Now, let me explain the consequential relationship between equality and political or constitutional power in a society. To me, this is a perfect example for explaining true essence of democracy in any nation, or you could say in any geographical region where people from different cultures, languages, professions and backgrounds live together. I will go deeper into this. Let's talk about professions. There can be highly educated people such as doctors, scientists, engineers, professors, bureaucrats, and many others. Similarly, there can also be farmers and workers. In other words, every country or region has both rich and poor people. If we measure people's status in terms of education, wealth, intelligence, and opportunities, they obviously fall at different levels on this scale. Now, let me remind you that I didn't mention power among those things, because the kind of power we are talking about should not automatically or naturally come along with education, wealth, intelligence, opportunities, or other things that we either earn through hard work or sometimes receive naturally. But in reality, in many cases, power doesn't exist alongside those things. I am not saying that's true everywhere, especially when we are talking about education and intelligence. In a modern society, having the highest level of education or intelligence doesn't automatically give someone political power. However, if those things ultimately become the byproducts of wealth and opportunities, then you may certainly possess a certain amount of power in society. So, does that mean power always revolves around these things? Will ordinary people with a decent amount of knowledge, resources, and wealth always be suppressed or dominated? I'm also talking about the people at the lowest level of society in terms of resources, money, and education. What's the answer? Or you could say, what's the solution to this problem? How can this problem be addressed? Will there never be equal rights, equal authority, and equal opportunities for all people, regardless of how much money, education, or opportunity they have? Now, let me tell you that the answer to all of these questions is democracy. That's the beauty of democracy. That's why I mentioned equality and political power earlier. Now, let me explain how democracy can solve the problems I highlighted above. I will explain it with the help of a few examples. You know, you don't need to be a highly educated person to become a politician. As far as I know, in many places there are no specific educational qualifications required to become a politician. However, at the very least, basic reading and writing skills are generally expected. In my opinion, this is actually a good provision. I will tell you why. At the same time, yes, people, especially young people today, want educated leaders. Now, let me ask you another question. Wouldn't the rich, the educated, and the intelligent always rule a nation or society if there were no rules, no laws, no order? In other words, no democracy. Obviously, they would. And in many ways, they still do in modern society. So, what I am trying to say is that Political power was originally established to prevent the domination of society by these classes of people. The primary objective of political power was to maintain equality in society. That's why I believe it was and still is the right approach, not to set specific educational benchmarks for becoming a politician. Otherwise, politics itself would once again become the exclusive monopoly of the wealthy and the upper class. And if that happened, would they truly want to establish equality? Definitely not. The purpose of political power is to solve the upliftment and advancement of society. It was created for a good purpose. You must have noticed that no matter how influential you are in your own profession or field, you are still expected to show respect to politicians and leaders who hold constitutional offices such as ministers, members of parliament, the president, and other public officials. They may have less wealth than you, they may have lower educational qualifications than you, they may even be less intellectually brilliant than you. Even so, you are expected to respect them. Why? Because they possess a certain amount of power that is defined and limited by the constitutional and the law, and they are supposed to use that power for the betterment of ordinary people and society. They are the voice of the people. And if you do something wrong, they are the ones who are expected to stop it or bring you to justice. Now tell me, isn't that a beautiful system? In addition to that, there are courts and the judiciary to decide whether political power has been used properly or misused. So, if you live your life according to morality and the laws established under democracy or the constitution, you shouldn't have to fear anyone, even if you are not very wealthy, highly educated, or socially influential. This is the overall concept and the practical function of democracy. But the irony is that in many countries that call themselves democratic, this concept exists only on paper. Instead of preventing others from ruling society single-handedly and maintaining equality, political leaders themselves try to rule and dominate the nation. They build close relationship only with the wealthy. In fact, they gradually place themselves in a position where they work only for that class of people. As a result, the original definition of democracy is gradually being diminished, and that is not good for the entire world because the whole world is one family. Please note that I am not saying this is happening in every nation around the world. Thank you for watching.